If your voice had one message for the world, what would it be?
If you feel like you need to say something, even you don't have anybody that you can speak with, you can always talk with yourself.
Welcome to Speaking Human with Dr. Damini. Speaking Human is a storytelling podcast where each episode traces how voices rooted and connected to Asia first learned to communicate, from childhood dynamics through key turning points to the way that they use their voice today. The goal is to explore how communication shapes who we are and to make honesty, vulnerability, and courage culturally aspirational. It is not a show about polished public speaking tips. It's about the messy, vulnerable, and often funny ways we learn to speak to ourselves, to others, and to the world. In the studio with me today, I have Yun Chen. With over 18 years corporate experience, Yun is now dedicated to helping professionals like herself through pivotal professional and life transitions through coaching. I don't want to say much else because I'd much rather we hear it from you. Let's start at the beginning. Tell me about where you were born, what were you like as a child, what were the dynamics growing up, and how did they shape how you communicate?
Okay, so first of all, thank you for having me with you, Damini. So probably some of you already know from my name, I was born in a town in China, and my mother tongue is Teochew. And actually, Teochew is one of the 4 Chinese dialects in Singapore, right? And wow, so if you ask me how I was like when I was a child back in China, in the town, at my hometown, I would say it was simple, easy, and free for me. But I was quiet, but I also sensitive and observant. So maybe I describe how my childhood was like. So most of the parents are busy working. So when I was not at school, or maybe when I was still a little girl, I just stayed with my grandparents. And it was like a community in today's context. So I stayed with my parents, and a lot of elderlies will come and gather. People just talk with each other and having tea. And when I saw the uncles, aunties, grandparents laughing, I just laughed with them, although I didn't know what they are talking about.
Okay, fair. Yeah. Okay.
So, and when I was in school, I would say I was a good student. And I think I'm always a good student. I study well, get good grades. But the funny part is that my parents never needed to set any discipline or any rules to force me to study.
You just did it?
Yes, I just did it.
Oh, so you're just a nerd, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first thing when I reach home after school, I just make sure I finish my homework. After that, I only watch TV or play with other kids or do other things.
So what was it? What do you think it was in you that made you want to do that? Or that like your parents never needed to, like, was there an inherent fear growing up of like the consequence of if you didn't do it? Or was it just who you were?
I probably think it is the second part. And I think because the environment is, for me, I feel it is safe and free. And because when I was at school, at that time, those teachers, they really dedicated their life for education. So there's like, once they are a teacher, they'll always be a teacher until they retire.
Yeah.
Right. And that kind of, I would say it is an environment that every student know that they're going to school to study. But I also observe that the teacher really treat every student equally.
Yep.
It doesn't matter whether you are a top student or whether you just failed your maths. But the teacher will always able to see the other part in that kid that, hey, you are not good at studying, but you're good at arts.
Right.
You're good at singing. So there's always time that we invite people or students to sing or perform before the class start.
Interesting. So tell me about like were you encouraged? So obviously, you know, it sounds like it was a very warm, safe, nurturing environment. Were you encouraged to have a voice and like speak up or have opinions? Or was that something that was a little uncomfortable?
Okay, that is the other side of school. It is an environment that everybody sits neatly in the class, and usually you are not allowed to talk unless the teacher asks a question and you put your hands up.
Yeah.
And then the teacher asks you to stand up and then you answer. Right. So, and that is a way that mold most of us to speak up only when we are asked to do so. And then there'll be some naughty boys, naughty girls, always. And those naughty boys, naughty ones will usually be asked to sit at the back of the classroom, isn't that? And they can make their own funny sounds. But the
So
rest,
you were always sitting in the front row though?
that is the interesting part because, you know, there's a saying that you get influenced by the people who you are close with.
Yep.
So usually, my teacher put me either sit at the middle or near the end, try to create that positive influence from me.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so you were supposed to be the good influence on the backbenchers.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting. So did you ever have a rebellious phase yourself?
If you ask me, I would say no.
Okay.
But that is only started in my 30s when I at work. But that is a story I can share with you later.
Okay, sure. What was communication like in your home? Like, how did your parents communicate with each other? What did you grow up seeing other adults do?
Okay, so my parents do not talk much then and now.
Then and now.
But we can just feel each other. I mean, in Chinese, they're saying that blood is thicker than water. That bond that with your family member is always there. And I think it's also because that environment they grown up is the same thing that they're just trying to survive. I mean, physically trying to survive at that time. Right. So for them, the first priority in life is to make sure I work hard, I get money, and I put food on the table for the kids and for myself. And then make sure that the kids is going to grow up in a life that is much better than us as the parents. So I think the energy, probably what I can see or what I can say is that probably they did not have much energy to really to talk or chit chat.
Yeah.
After a whole day of busy work. Yeah.
So did you grow up ever seeing any conflict, or like what was the role of conflict in those early years?
Oh, yeah.
Or was it just very peaceful all the time?
That is not possible to be peaceful always. And I mean, emotion definitely is with every human. And there's time when parents are too stressed. I mean, they do scold the kids, right? Well, even I'm a good student. I was such a nice girl. I was so polite. But there's a time I was naughty, or maybe my mom asked me to do something I did not follow. So temper was shown up and thrown to me. I mean, those are times I remember, but I kind of never feel bad about that. I mean, I kind of can understand that, hey, because my mom was tired, she's stressed. At that moment, I really did something to make her anger just show up to me, and that's it.
I feel like I just want to send my kids to you for coaching so that you can just have this good influence on my kids, and then they can grow up believing everything mommy does is wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about your teen years, right? Like every parent, I think, dreads the teenage years coming for their children. Tell me a little bit about your teenagers. Was it much of the same where you just kind of put your head down and did what you were expected to? Did you ever have any sort of rebellious phase at all?
Okay, so I continue my study in China till middle school. Here is like almost finish your O level. And then in 1998, I came to Singapore with a scholarship to study here. And I think times until 1998, I was always a good student, nothing really much, right? And I mean, as you asking me, was there a time I was not a good student?
No, it doesn't have to be, because like I had a rebellious phase, but my grades never dropped, right? So my grades, I maintained my grades, but I still had a rebellious phase.
Yeah.
So, just not sort of doing exactly what the script said.
Okay, but I wanted to tell you that maybe that was inside me, right? But not showing out, right? Because I was not expressive, I was not talkative. Like, so usually when when girls, teenage girls as a group, there's a lot of talking, right? But if I was in a group of girls, I was the one that just listen and observe.
And why do you think that was?
I would say that probably just part of me, because I felt okay at that time. And if you ask me trying to put it a little bit of psychological perspective, I wouldn't say there's any fear, or maybe I felt that there was a need to really talk so much.
So what would you say, like in those, because, those years are really critical years for most women, I think, as girls, as teenage girls, that time in our lives sort of shapes how we see ourselves and then how we want the world to see us. So what would you say were the moments that shaped your self-worth or the way that you expressed yourself as a teenager and into early adulthood?
So I was saying that in 1998, I came to Singapore, and then starting in 1999, I entered an independent girls' school, secondary school in Singapore. And that was a turning point, if I want to put it that way, because the culture is very different. And first of all, it is the language barrier. It's all English, and the English school. And before I came to Singapore, the simple English that I have learned is just, this is a boy, that is a girl. So it was very difficult for me, right? But it is not difficult for me to pick up maths, physics, chemistry. Those are science, and it is easy to learn. You don't really need to talk so much. But in fact, English was the subject that I actually failed in my first year of oral exam. And I knew that I was going to fail after that 30 minutes, because at that moment, I still remember that I just went blank. My mind just went blank. And my tongue, I felt like my tongue was twisted. I couldn't even complete a sentence by saying that loud. And after that, I went back to hostel. I cried. And then I called my parents in China. So at that time, we're still using those public phone. And then we have that phone card. Still remember, they slot that phone card, $5, $10. You can probably just speak for 3 minutes or 5 minutes. Yeah. And then my parents comforted me for a while. And then after that, my uncles, auntie called me as well. So, I mean, again, I felt that, okay, so I still always have my families, no matter where they are, where I am. And okay, I just pick up myself. Okay, I know that I'm always a good student. I can study well. So I did quite well in O-level. When I said well, it is C5.
Okay.
Okay, so at least it's still better than pass. But for me, it is still a failure compared to someone who always is a top student. And if now you ask me to kind of really, as a coach, I do a lot of reflection these days. So that's one thing I kind of realized, that psychological safety wasn't something I can have in that environment.
Yeah.
And of course, psychological safety is different for different people.
Yeah.
So for me, I have experienced that when I'm back into my childhood, in school, at home, like it is free. Everybody can just speak and laugh. If you don't want to talk, you can just keep quiet. And if you're good at maths, you just continue to show good result in maths. But if you can sing well, you can just go and perform in front of the class. But for me, I felt there's these expectations and there is competitions. And the competition, not just among the students, not among the girls. And that also can see that competition is part of the expectation.
Mm.
And in fact, it just felt a little bit depressed. And sometimes because that competition, you also feel threatened. And that kind of not safe for me. And I wasn't feel very free. And that was a time I wasn't be able to be a good student.
Mm.
Yeah.
So how did you, what did you do to come out of that? And how did you deal with that feeling of being unsafe because of that competition?
I mean, I kind of just ignore.
Mm.
I mean, that ignorance is probably one way to protect yourself as well.
Did it make you go into your shell even more? Like you were already someone who was quiet. Was it harder then to communicate with the people around you when you felt unsafe in that way?
Definitely. And then you felt that you were smaller. Yeah.
What do you believe at that point you needed to be able to succeed?
I think for me, there was this seed planted in me when I was a little girl back home. So I remember there was this Chinese calligraphy. So maybe I read it in Chinese called 天生我材必有用. It means that everybody was born with their own unique talents. And everybody was able to make contribution and create values. I knew that when I was maybe just 3 or 4 years old. And I asked my grandpa what that means, and then he explained to me and so on. And I think that is something I kind of have that belief that, okay, so everyone can be a talent, and I'm a talent, you're also a talent, but in a way that means we're all equal.
That's a really wise sort of perspective to have at a young age, right? Did you feel ever that you had to perform or you had to be a certain way to be accepted or to sort of fall in with the crowd or, to be part of the ecosystem?
Okay, so one thing I was sharing with you that I wasn't a talkative girl. So this is very unlike most of the girls.
Yeah.
Unlike most of the women in today as well. So, and there was a time I felt uncomfortable, but there's also something I felt inside that, but it is okay to be different, right? Because everyone is unique. You can be show up who you are. But definitely, if not part of the group, you could not feel that relationship, right? And then that connection as well. But I think going back to that, my belief and understanding that everybody is a unique talent, that means it put me very independent. I become very independent because if I'm a talent, I have that potential. I can really just achieve by working hard or maybe working smart and come up with different ways of reaching the goal. And I think after all, when you see, hey, there's a big group of girls, they're just laughing, chit-chatting, but I felt that, okay, I can just sit there, I listen. But there's also a point that why am I sitting here? Like the topic they're talking about is not very deep. Okay, my standard. and they're just talking about, okay, so I'm going to buy this diamond. Or maybe like talking about those things like, okay, that's beautiful, but okay. But okay, I kind of that kind of thinking
I hear
voice.
You. I think I told you about the time. So when I moved to Hong Kong and I wasn't working for a little while because of the dental licensing issue, it was really interesting because there's only so many coffee mornings you can go for, and there's only so much idle chat you can do about shopping and about superficial things. And I think that's also why our conversations have been so interesting because they go deep very quickly. So I do understand that. How did that, let's shift gears a little bit. So you were born in China, you moved to Singapore in 98, 99, and that's kind of, where you had a little bit of an inflection in coming from an environment that felt very safe to you to now an environment where competition made you feel unsafe and made you feel not at your best. And it actually impacted the way that you were sort of showing up and performing. Let's move to like your early stages of your career. So what happened next? So you finished your education and you did university in Singapore.
Yeah.
So tell me about university and then sort of leading into your first job here.
Sure. So in fact, I would also want to say that I think I was lucky that I did not score very, very well. Okay. So I kind of moved into a junior college, which is more diverse. Right. So at that time, I see boys and girls coming from different secondary school. And the first 3 months, people just wear their own uniform from the secondary school. And at that moment, I felt I'm released. Like I was released. That, okay, so now this looks brighter, more diversity. And that is actually made me feel alive more. And I kind of pick up that good student. Easy and study become easy. Because for me, study is always an easy thing to do. It is not necessary to be hard, and I enjoy. And of course, I still went for extra English class, but I enjoyed English class, which is so different feeling.
It's just that little bit of confidence boost almost, isn't it? To just feel part of something bigger and not feel so caught up in the rat race. We'll come back to this topic in a little bit because you shifted gears again later on. But so let's talk about your first job and what was your communication style in your early career years? Because we talked about how you were quiet and you were happy being quiet, you know, growing up, and there was no need for you to speak up. But in a work environment, in a professional context, obviously that does change because you can't just be a quiet observer all the time. So how did you have to adapt your communication style in those early years when you started working?
Okay, so again, coming back to the culture of the organization. And apparently the first bank that I started my banking career is more like a local Chinese bank. So, and that was almost 18 years ago, isn't that? So it was still very traditional Chinese culture. And people tend to just follow in a way. And we know that this hierarchy in the organization. And so in the meeting, quite similar to like in school, right? There's quite a lot of top-down informing and tell you that this is a decision we follow and so on. But when I was working with my peers, my colleagues, it is a different way of communication because I'm working on project and at that time was business intelligence. That was like the first, before AI was BI. And so we need to have a lot of discussion. And I was new and I was young. So you can ask a lot of questions. So I was the one, okay, keep asking why you are doing that, why the data is in this way, and why you are creating things in the system and so on. But it helped me to learn a lot very quickly. So I started asking questions as a way of learning at the workplace.
Did you ever feel shy or awkward? Like, I feel like a lot of people worry about asking, you know, they'll say, oh, is that a stupid question? Or sorry, I have a silly question. Did you ever feel like you'd be judged for the questions you were asking?
No, because I could not remember who told me this, but I remember someone told me that you should ask as many questions as possible when you just started your job because that is a time nobody will judge you.
Fair. That's great advice.
And I think I was also quite observant. And I can tell at office who are my managers and some of the senior who are more open to share. And those are the people usually I approach.
Okay. So you ask questions. At what point? Like at some point, you're not new anymore, right? So what happens then?
What happened then? That's a good question. I think I could. Okay, so first of all, as you mentioned, at certain point, you already reach that level. You are seen as a leader or a manager. So I kind of follow most of the manager did at the office. You give instructions to junior staff. You told them what to do and even sometimes how to do it. And that was a very traditional way of teaching. Well, at that time, people said it's coaching, but actually it's not coaching.
I suppose it was very structured communication.
Yes.
It wasn't chit-chatting. So through all of this, I'm going off script here, but through all of this, like what was the role of friendships for you? Like were your co-workers the people that you socialized with, or did you have a different persona outside of work and communicate differently with your friends?
Okay, even with my friends, I'm also the one that talk quite little. But I do have very close friends from my first job until now. They become my close friends till now. So that's a good thing about working in a more local Chinese cultural organization, that people tend to be like a family. Right? Although we follow the family tradition to be structured or maybe follow hierarchy, but lunchtime we always hang out together and we have a lot of after Friday night gathering.
Yep.
And I think at that time, I was lucky that to have a group of peers about the same age. Yeah. So those kind of bonding would have fun. In Singapore, good food is always the place you want to go.
Yep.
And I think that is interesting to really get into a little bit more personal level of understand people who coming from different culture, because sometimes we gather at people's house. But again, I did not really talk much, but I just really observe, follow, and have the fun.
Because you don't talk much then, right? By design, then you are more of a listener, right? So Speaking Human, which is my book, the platform, it's a framework. The H in the human stands for hearing deeply. So this is obviously something that is very core to you and also to the work that you do now. What is some of the most interesting like stories or things that came out that you have heard just by simply being the person listening and like not being part of a conversation?
Oh, there's a lot at workplace. Okay, I mean,
go on, spill it.
I mean, okay, I would say this is probably quite common. Like you go to a meeting and the boss is saying something, but after the boss said one or two sentences, you know that he or she just want you to follow. And so there's no need listening that the person is prepared to do in a meeting or in a conversation. All right. And this, again, is like a one-way dialogue. And sometimes it is also presented in the way that, hey, maybe this is a meeting we can share, but actually it's not.
Yeah. Okay, so you're actually almost in a way here listening for nonverbal cues in a way, right? Because it's what people are not saying, but they mean. And that's a benefit of being a person who is more of an observer than someone who's busy speaking. That's so interesting. Do you feel like there's a defining moment in that early phase of your career that reshaped how you speak, listen, or lead?
Yeah, I mean, the example I just shared, I didn't feel that it is the right way of communication or simply just a way to engage people at workplace. And again, I could not really express that because like most people just follow that. And of course, when it is an informal setup, then you see people saying things differently.
So tell me, I mean, okay, so that was that setup, right? And then you went from there to a different bank where the culture was very, very different. So let's talk a little bit about that. And there was a very different style of communication. Tell me about that and how that worked for you or didn't.
Yeah, at first it was quite a cultural shock. Like, so in the past, the meeting just usually the boss or the manager will say quite a lot and then people probably just take note and follow. But in this place, in a meeting, we're talking about to initiate a project, something like that. And everybody will share their opinions. And sometimes you also feel a bit strange. Hey, that person wasn't going to be part of this project, but that person is talking a lot.
Still has an opinion. Isn't that amazing when people have opinions on things that they shouldn't?
I would say they could, but probably the opinions is more about that part, but less about as a team or as a project, what we need to achieve. And it was quite a new experience for me. But that is also becoming exciting for me that, oh, okay, so this place, everybody can share. So it's quite free to talk about what you think or what you disagree even.
Did it make you start talking more?
Yes.
Or were you still the quiet Yun?
I started talking a little bit more because when everybody talking, it feel okay, just go with the flow. At the meeting, of course. But the other side I observe is that, wow, when everybody is talking, then the efficiency is not really there. Like
so true.
The process to make decision, the process to make change is a little bit slower.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when you talk so much and we still need most of the part of the process is to do and to deliver.
Do you feel like one is better or worse? Like, I know that, different situations require different decision-making processes. But if you had to compare the two, where one is kind of almost dictatorial in a way, right? Where it's, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to do it. Now you go execute, versus, okay, this is the problem. Let's hear everyone's opinion on this, and then we'll make a decision, and then we'll move forward. In your experience in corporate, is one approach more effective than the other? Not in terms of time efficiency, but in terms of buy-in, maybe.
I would say if I need to make a choice, I think I would prefer the second way, like the later way that at least you open that. Because we said there's a way how we innovate or make change, you need to diverge and then you converge. So that at the initial, we really need to get people to share, and that will open up a lot more opportunities. But when we reach a certain point, we start need to converge. Yeah. And again, it's really a middle ground of these two. And I think also, again, as you mentioned, based on situation, based on the urgencies of this case and so on. But if you ask me, I would say we need to invite more voices to share. And again, those voices also need to be, I would say, relevant. Right.
Yeah, relevant. That's exactly right. Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. I want to talk a little bit about, so one of my favorite chapters in the book is chapter 24, and it talks about being cracked open. And in my personal context, that's sort of about, for me, motherhood was that moment of kind of reckoning where I sort of had to stop and relook at my life and just figure out, where do I really want to go? How am I showing up in the world? What really matters to me? And how do I want to communicate and connect with the world? And what do I want to pass on to my children? So, not everyone is a parent. And for different people, that moment of reckoning is different. And I feel like a lot of millennials, especially, are going through those moments of reckoning around me at the moment. What was your, was it an event? Was it something at work that cracked you open, for want of a better phrase, that made you want to make a change out of corporate?
Okay, so I did not hide that, and I think I did share that before. I think that crack moment was the burnout that I had. That was a couple years before COVID. I was working in this huge program. It was quite stressful, and we have already tight timeline. And personally, my relationship with some other personal relationship was also quite stressful. But I wanted to perform. I have a team. I also need to manage a lot of stakeholders. I need to deliver and so on. And then burnout actually made me change to someone who was angry inside and sometimes outside, because sometimes you just could not control. And I felt I was so tired physically, mentally, and sometimes emotionally as well. So at that time, I didn't know that was burnout. Yeah, and I think, but people noticed that, and my close friend noticed that, and she was a social worker at that time. And then there's one day she sent me a message or a picture that, hey, there is a center they're teaching on mindfulness. Maybe you want to attend that class. And I saw that, and I sat quiet with myself for a while. I think I needed to go. So that was a time I attended an 8-week mindfulness practice course, and that was the first time I was able to really sit quietly with myself. Like you learn about mindfulness, you learn about mindfulness breathing, mindfulness practice, journaling, and also a lot of group discussion and so on. So I think that was the starting point. I start to recognize that, okay, I think I needed to take good care of myself.
Were there patterns that you needed to unlearn, or sort of conversations that you needed to, in those moments of sitting with yourself, conversations that you needed to have with yourself to sort of undo or unlearn patterns that you had built up over the years?
I think first of all is really to be with myself. Even I was quiet, it doesn't mean that I was with myself. And when I said when I was with myself, it's really to sense myself, hear what my head was saying, and also really to understand what emotions that I was going through. Because I mean, for Asian, for Chinese, since young, we're told that don't be sad, don't be angry, right? Don't cry, right? And kind of, okay, so we learned that, we just did not let it come out. But emotion is always there. You cannot not having emotion because you're a human being. And so I think that was time I really learned a lot of mindfulness practice and so on. I think the most useful technique is really mindfulness breathing. And until today, I do spend almost 15 to 20 minutes every day to meditation. And that is really to observe yourself and let your thoughts coming out without judgment. And I mean, they're saying that if the thought came out, you just saw that it's a cloud, it came and go. But in a way, help me to become non-judgmental with myself. Because earlier on, I was sharing with you that, hey, although I was quiet, but I still felt uncomfortable, not able to be mingled with a group of girls talking about buying diamond. At that moment, I was judging myself by being myself. And so I think that kind of mindfulness, understanding what I'm going through internally, helped me stop judging myself and accept it is.
You know, it's beautiful. I'm smiling so much because I think without meaning to, what you just summed up right here, right now, is actually the entire Speaking Human framework, right? So it's hearing yourself deeply. So creating that space to really be with yourself, to understand your context. So allow your thoughts to be heard in your internally, but then to understand the context of, why am I thinking this way or feeling this way, and to be okay with that, and to moderate your self-talk without judgment, to understand what authenticity means to you, right? To really learn to be okay with who you are. And it's not that you have to love all the parts of you, but it is to be okay and comfortable with, this is who I am. And that last part is the needs, and sort of recognizing, like, okay, what do I need in this situation? And how am I going to feel like myself and show up as my best self? And once you create that space for that thinking and that pattern, it really makes a huge difference. How did these shifts for you transform how you hold space for others?
Sometimes I just felt that things happen for a reason, like many people said that, but I also want to add that things happen for the right timing.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, I was doing inner work, going through mindfulness practice and so on. And then our organization also started to transform itself. And in today, everybody know about agile working.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's a prepare our organization to move into a new way of working into agile. And so when I was managing project, if you are in the context of understanding what project management we used to do waterfall, it's like big chunk, and then you deploy. So it takes a lot of time. And agile is really you becoming more flexible and you create self-organized team, and then you have people who play equal roles, less about title. And that organization was trying to create a coaching culture.
Yeah.
So, and actually, because after I studied mindfulness, I felt that, hey, this is something I really need to continue. So I decided to take out a positive psychology study. And that was supposed to start in 2020, but you know that 2020 was the start of COVID. So I was thinking that, I need to really do a good time management because I need to spend weekday, evening, and weekend to go to school to study. But everything moved online. And then in the same year, 2020, the bank offered a sponsorship or scholarship for the mid or senior leaders to take training in coaching, and then we became an internal executive coach. So in 2020, I started learning positive psychology. At the same time, went to coaching training.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, if you ask me what happened or why it happened, I think everything was planned.
Yeah. So you did the positive psychology, you did the coaching, and that's the work that you've been doing. I want to shift gears here a little bit because what I'm really interested to know is, I know you work with clients all over the world, but with people, because this podcast is about voices rooted in Asia or originating from Asia, what patterns do you see in your coaching clients shaped by their Asian conditioning?
I would probably look at it or maybe learn from the experiences of my clients who were born in Asia but now is living in other part of the world like US, Europe, or Australia. I think they tend to follow that tradition. They kind of value the tradition much more.
Of the old, they haven't moved on in time in a way.
In a way, they moved on, but they remember their roots. And they tend to be more focused on people, like focus on the community. Like I have a CEO who was Chinese, but a CEO in a family office in US. So in the 10 years of his role as a CEO for the company, he made sure that everybody was taken care of. He treat people like family. And those people just follow him in the 10 years and now expanding his business into venture capital and so on. But he still spend sessions with me to really think carefully how to communicate that, hey, we need to move our office to a different location because some people may not like it. And really focus on the people working with him and really treat people like family. And then the other pattern I observed that because you are an Asian and you are in a non-Asian place, you tend to be more careful about who you are. And sometimes that authenticity is not very easy for them. And I think that probably not just for Asian in US and Europe, I think probably for Asian in Asia.
Yep.
We also tend to have a little bit of different understanding of authenticity.
We've talked a lot about tradition in the Asian context. And I think one of the things, like what you were just talking about, authenticity, and it's hard to sort of hold that authenticity when you are from a different culture coming to another place. I feel like, when I hear my parents and their friends speak, or even the grandparents' generation speak, there's a big concern and a big worry that like our generation or the next generation have forgotten their roots and they've forgotten the traditions, and everyone is becoming a little more homogenized and westernized in that sense. How do you think we can blend tradition and the reality of what we live in today and the world that we live in today that is so global?
That's a big question. But you know what immediately came to my mind is McDonald's.
Okay.
Okay. McDonald's is from American and fast food is American culture.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you really want to look at things in a very big scale, affecting a lot of people, you need to bring that practice from your home to the society or to people outside your society. And that create that impact. I mean, it's common to say that politics, economy, it go hand in hand, but the underlying is the culture that boosts what is going to happen for the next generation. I mean, in another way, there's some critics saying that, hey, you kind of make culture become politics.
Yep.
But it is hard to separate as in that. I mean, who you are is also coming from your culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
And at the end of the day, people tend to see division or separation. But I mean, for me, I always see what is common. Like you said, Asian people are very hardworking. American people are also very hardworking. Right? And you said women are sensitive, but men are also sensitive. So in a way, you don't really need to divide or separate one element from another element. They can be what they are, but what is common of these two that bring up that impact. So if your question is how to help the newer generation remember their roots, I mean, you cannot stop them to use social media.
Yep.
I mean, I just suddenly came up with an idea on the spot. But what you have on the social media, can you make it with some element related to your culture?
Yeah. That's a big one. I feel like we have a whole other conversation to have around that.
And
we can have another conversation about that. As we start to wrap our conversation today, I want to ask you a little bit about how would you describe your communication style today? Because, what I've seen of you, and I wouldn't have asked you on the podcast if you were really, really quiet. So I wouldn't say you're really quiet anymore. Everything you say is obviously very thought out and sort of considered and sensible. But how would you describe your communication style today?
I think I'm not going to use one of those from the textbook, but probably I'll say it's intuitive. Because with our experience, with our learning, and a lot of inner work that we do in ourselves, I think that intuition kind of developed in ourselves. Yeah. So I say it's intuitive is my way of communication style.
What truth about yourself has taken you the longest to own?
To speak up more often.
Fair. Okay. And what do you hope that the next generation learns about communication?
Because if you ask me, I wouldn't really have any expectation on them. But probably one thing is communication is just a way that you express yourself on the external. But you need to have that harmony, that alignment with yourself. So it's also about learning yourself, have that conversation with yourself.
Yeah, have the hard conversations with yourself, as my book says. If your voice had one message for the world, what would it be?
If you feel like you need to say something, even you don't have anybody that you can speak with, you can always talk with yourself.
That's a really important message, actually, because I think in a world where we're constantly chasing companionship, we're constantly chasing validation from the external world, that to remember that actually you are there for you, and you can have that conversation anytime. And often, I do say in the book as well that the way we live, love, and lead is all shaped by the conversations that we're willing to have with ourselves. So thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for bringing your story, your courage, your voice to this platform. I'm sure there's so many listeners out there and people who are watching this who will see parts of themselves in your story and in your lived experiences. Thank you so much for being with me today, Yun.
Thank you, Damini, for having me with you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Speaking Human podcast. I'm Dr. Damini Chawla, your host. The purpose of this podcast is to create a society where honesty, vulnerability, and human connection are culturally aspirational. As such, we've asked every guest on the podcast to choose a charity that they like to support. We've included the details of this charity of their choice in the information for this episode. Please feel free to make a donation if the cause speaks to you. Thank you for joining us once again. Do like, follow, and subscribe.